coffee lovers! My name is Chona Camille Vinci Cruz Abeledo, and I'm here to talk about the connection between the quality of the coffee you're drinking and the central dogma of molecular biology. Coffee is one of the most popular backdrops of popular media, and it is also at the forefront of a lot of people's minds in the morning, afternoon, or evening, as more than 2.2 billion cups of coffee are consumed every day. But it's not always so easy to get that perfect cup of coffee. Earlier, we've seen a demonstration on how coffee is ideally brewed, and we've also gone through the criteria on what high-quality coffee is by our cupping experts. You've also seen that there is a lot of intensive research on coffee genetics in order to determine the species and variety that will give us the perfect cup. And all of these are being done to answer the question, what makes for a good cup of coffee? The credit of increasing coffee production and consumption goes to its alluring organoleptic characteristics. And when we refer to the coffee's organoleptic characteristics, we refer to its traits that can be perceived by our senses. This includes color, taste, notes, caffeine content, and so much more. There is a huge variety of methods for post-harvest processing of coffee berries that can lead to a good or bad cup. But to complicate things further, there is something about the inherent characteristics of the coffee berries themselves that will influence the amount of joy you will get from drinking that cup of coffee. The inherent tasty properties of coffee is a balance of genetics and the environment. And both of these, genetics and the environment, governs the processes in the central dogma of molecular biology. There are three major events in the central dogma that is relevant in the creation of the perfect cup of coffee. The process of replication is the natural procedure within the cell where it duplicates its genetic content in preparation for creating new cells. During replication, minute changes in the DNA of the organism can occur as accidents, and this could affect the recipes present within the genes that are responsible for creating new proteins. The genes present within the cells of a coffee plant represents the recipes to create the metabolites that will eventually define whether your coffee will be good or bad. Tiny changes in the genes coding for the metabolites responsible for coffee's organoleptic characteristics could result to a completely different protein and a completely different taste. These tiny modifications can happen spontaneously in the life of the plant. It can happen during the preparatory stages leading to cell division that will help the plant grow and develop, or it could happen due to recombination events that lead up to sexual reproduction. At this point, the environment can also play a role because mutations can sometimes be triggered by cold weather, temperature fluctuations, or even insect damage. If you look at this diagram alone, you can see that there are multiple points of modification wherein the gene sequence alone does not define the final characteristics present in the plant. At this point, what becomes relevant is another process of the central dogma, which is known as transcription. Transcription is a process that involves the creation of a temporary molecule called the messenger RNA. The messenger RNA conveys information from the nucleus of the plant cells to structures that are necessary to create the proteins. The presence of the genes for a certain metabolite that can make the coffee taste good or bad does not mean anything, however, if it is not triggered by an external stimuli. External stimuli or signals includes growth hormones as a response to available nutrients in the soil. It could also be the expression of the heat shock response dependent on temperature stress being experienced by the plant, and so on. Even if a gene has been given a go signal to start creating its counterpart proteins, So many things, as shown here, can still affect the process of transcription. And these will eventually dictate whether the expression of the characteristic will push through or not, or even the intensity or how much of the metabolite will eventually be produced. And even after transcription is concluded and protein synthesis or translation begins, it doesn't mean that the creation of the protein will be straightforward. Translation is the third process of the Central Dogma that is relevant to our perfect cup of coffee. Translation is an event that happens outside the nucleus in structures called the ribosome. Here, the messenger RNA is read by the ribosomes as a set of instructions in order to create the perfect sequence of amino acids that correspond to the correct protein that is needed by the plant. Even the process of protein synthesis and even the events after that can lead to modification, instabilities, and other controls that would affect how the final characteristic is present in the plant. And though all of these things are happening within the cell at a molecular level, these are all triggered by environmental signals ranging from temperature, soil nutrition, humidity, availability of water, and more. So, at the end of the day, the physical characteristics of the coffee berry, which will turn into coffee beans, and then eventually into your favorite cup of coffee, is determined by both the environment and their genes. The genes limit the existing recipes or metabolite conformations that the coffee plant can have. But how much of these metabolites are expressed and subtle variations in their structure is largely affected by the environment. Combine this with post-harvest processing and you'll end up with a large variety of coffee quality and taste. And that's why an Arabica harvested from Bukidnon, or one harvested from the Cordillera, or one grown in your own backyard will taste differently from each other. The unique combination of altitude, climate, and the genetics of the organism will create distinct berries all throughout the year. So that's it for our discussion on the biology, chemistry, and ecology of coffee plants that affect the taste of your favorite cup of coffee. If you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to ask after this talk. Thank you very much and see you around!